All right, so I have the top cover plate for the C-notch made. Oh, also got some hairs cut, and I located all the holes and punched them out. I got the 4 holes for where the air tank is going to mount, and now I'm going to use this hydraulic rivet setter that I use for my riv nuts, and you can also use for rivets, that I got from Hammer Fab. And I'm going to use these 2 dimple dies that I also got from Hammer Fab. And what this is a countersunk recess kind of thing for 1/4-20 fasteners. So I did a little test panel over here. So you can see it takes that plain hole, makes this raised dimple that has the correct angle for a fastener that has the bevel on it. It's like a countersunk fastener. Of course, it's not going to be countersunk into the panel because that dimple part is raised up, but it's going to add a little strength to the panel, and it's going to add a real nice aesthetic to this, so it's not just a boring flat piece of sheet metal that's bolted to the top of the C-notch. I was going to do some bead rolled elements in it, but you can see there's not a whole lot of space that's not taken up by mounting various things. I could have run just a thin one down the middle here maybe, but really the air tank goes and covers most of this panel here anyways, and this is really just an access panel. So using these dies to add some shape to all these holes is all we need to kind of dress this thing up a little bit. So what I'm going to do, and this is 18 gauge, I think. So this is a little on the thick end for this tool and these dies. The practice panel I did over there is the same thickness, and it worked pretty good, but it didn't fully dimple it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the handheld machine to dimple as best I can all of the holes, and then I'll take it over there to my shop press and finish out the holes. We'll be able to add a little extra pressure to it just to make those dimples extra crisp, and it'll help keep the panel flat. So that's what I'm going to do now. I don't have any 1/4-20 fasteners that have the countersunk head on it. I have them on order from McMaster-Carr. I'll still be able to just use normal bolts for now. So I want to do that, then I'll get the panel back installed, and then I want to install the air tank, and then I can kind of start figuring other stuff out with the air system, like the manifold that all of the airlines run into and out of for the Airlift Performance 3H system. And so one of the other things that I've done off camera here is I got the air compressors mounted up high and tight.
You know how you see somebody who wears like jeans that are too high and too tight, and you're like, the fuck?
So what's up, jeans out of the way. And eventually I'm going to have an interior panel that comes in here and closes the back off, because I actually don't want the air system to be on display. I want you to open the trunk and everything will just be nice and clean. I'll have carpet and upholstery on the panels, and I'll make the panels probably just magnetically clip into place. So these will be hidden, but I got the Airlift Performance isolator mounts here, so this thing can wiggle around and vibrate a bit, and what that does is it won't transfer the vibrations from the compressor when it's running into the chassis. And especially since I have it mounted up on the inner fender well here, I didn't want it to kind of be humming like crazy when they were on. So this is mounted up here, got plenty of wiggle room. The mounts just bolt on. I just did some quick sheet metal mounts with some nut certs, and you can see where the hardware is right here, plenty out of the way of the tire and everything else. I'll add some rubberized washers to seal the elements out of there eventually. Got those on order too. And then you can see the feed line just pokes out here and the air tank will fit right here, and this will go into each end where the tank gets fed.
Don't bring anyone mother into this.
So we'll get all this mounted up, and then I'll be able to figure out where we're gonna put the manifold and any of the other plumbing and variables that go along with that system. And then I'll be able to keep working my way forward. I got the gas tank mounted, as you've seen. I went ahead and I ran the brake line to the front, the fuel line to the front. I need to mount the fuel pump. I got this Holley fuel pump here that has a pre-filter right on it, and then I just have this going to a -6 fitting because I'm using 3/8 inch hard line for the fuel line. I'm hoping 3/8 isn't too big. I may have to downsize eventually, one size smaller. I had some 3/8 aluminum tubing from a long time ago, and so I just used that. There ends up being a problem with supplying the right amount of volume of fuel. Then I can deal with that. But you can see the fuel line here is just stubbed out. It's run all the way down along the frame rail there. We have the brake line on this side. It comes up here and it's gonna go through the firewall with a union bulkhead. I'm basically, like I've been saying, working my way from the back to the front, and then I'll deal with each side, doing the air line and the brake soft line and the brake hard line on both sides, and then kind of connect it up to the systems. And we'll kind of focusing on some of that stuff right now. And I mean, there's so much stuff to do, big picture, small picture stuff. That's why with my thought process, I'm just starting at the back, working my way forward, and that way everything will clear each other as far as the air and brake and exhaust systems and everything like that. I did just get headers in the mail. I do have some long tubes, but I'm not using them. Instead, I got these cast iron headers from 12bolt.com. These are reproductions of some vintage headers, and they're nice cast iron, so they'll be ultra reliable, and they're basically, you know, like block huggers. So it'll give me plenty of room for the steering shaft and all of the other plumbing and wiring and everything else that's going on in the engine bay. I'm going to get the transmission bolted to the bell housing, and then we'll get the engine back in the engine bay, and it'll just be on that motor mount and the transmission mount, and then I'll have to get a jack with a piece of wood underneath it to get it all level and square so that I can build the motor mount for the driver's side of the engine. I'll wind up taking off this air line, back a few clamps, and wrapping it up underneath the car so that none of the heat and sparks and everything from the MIG welding that I'll have to do here will damage the airline. And so we'll get that built up, and then it is going to be time to put the rear end back in the car. I had it out so I could do all of that airline plumbing and the brake line plumbing and get everything clamped up underneath there. And so I need to get the rear end back up under and in the car. That way I can put the wheels on it and I can get it on the ground. I need to get it on the ground to be able to do the brake soft line for the front calipers. So I need to figure out where this can route to the frame, where at aired all the way out and aired all the way up and turned all the way right and turned all the way left. In both of those situations, this doesn't get pinched by anything, doesn't rub the tire. So that's going to be pretty tricky, I think, to figure out exactly what I'm going to do with it. I have some ideas, but we won't know until we know. And once I get the brake soft lines figured out, there'll be a tab on the chassis where they'll terminate and then turn into hard lines, and the hard lines will route up to the firewall like I showed you, just like everything else. Then at that point, all of the exterior plumbing on the car will be done, and I'll just have to mount the gas pedal, the brake pedal, the clutch pedal, and then plumb from those bulkhead unions up to the respective items that they need to be plumbed to. And so project is moving along really quick, and it feels good to be on this part of the project because, as you saw, spent a lot of time on all the sheet metal, and it felt like every day I was just getting nothing done until all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're almost done here. And so now things are happening so fast, and I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. Still have probably 100, 120 hours of work left before this thing is ready to start and attempt to drive, but things are looking up. All right, so since you last saw, a lot has happened. I didn't film pretty much any of it because it was really pretty menial tasks. It would have been a pain in the butt to film, slightly boring to watch. And so what I'm gonna do now is just do the tell part of the show and tell, and we'll go over everything that has happened. So I got the tank in place, which I think you've seen before. You definitely see me make the tank mounts on the C-notch bridge. And so we got the tank mounted, and I got the dual air compressors mounted as well. I got the Airlift Performance compressor isolators, so they're sprung and have a lot of wiggle to them, so they won't be transmitting all the vibration to the chassis. I mounted those up on top of the wheel wells, up out of the way. Eventually there'll be an interior panel that they are behind, so you won't even see them. And after that, I started working on all of the airline plumbing. And so I went and I bought some really nice nickel-plated bulkhead unions for the airlines to pass from the interior to the exterior. And everything flows out of the Airlift Performance manifold to these bulkhead units nice and clean, and they all come out right up here on the inside of the C-notch. Everything clears the axle when it's up in here. It's a little tight in a few spots, but I can still snake my hand between them, so there's plenty of room for that. And so we have coming out, we have the front left bag, the front right bag, the rear left bag, the rear right bag. This is the manifold feed. So this comes out of the air compressor tank down to this filter that has a drain on it, and back up to the manifold to supply all of the bags with air. And then this right here that has nothing connected to it is the exhaust port for the manifold. I'm eventually going to route this down and away to the frame rail and have a like a little pod filter on it that you'd have for like a breather on a valve cover or something like that, just so nothing can crawl up in there, and it might muffle the sound of the air when the air is being released out of the system and the car is lowering down. And then we also have the tank drain right here that comes out, and that just has a nice little bleeder valve, so I'll be able to get up underneath the car and open that and drain out any water that might accumulate due to the compressed air in the tank. Also right here, right now it's just a Schrader valve, but this is where the pressure relief or blow-off valve is going to be. So if there's a malfunction and the compressors over-pressurize the system, the valve will open up here and bleed all that air off. So that's what goes right here in this T, and that just comes out the left side of the tank. And then right here, there's a 90-degree with a 3/8 female NPT, and that is where I am going to put a Schrader valve so I can manually fill the system if need be, if something's wrong with the compressors, or I can also bleed air out of the system if I ever need to service any of the lines or anything like that. I can take the air out of the system. And so that is all of the air routing and plumbing that's going on here. I used a whole bunch of nice P-clamps to mount everything with nut certs. It goes up and over the axle here and on the other side. And you can see the fuel tank is in place like you've seen before. I got an adapter fitting here that's a 90-degree, goes to the right size barb fitting I need. So we'll have some soft fuel line loop from here to here. This is a Holley fuel pump, and it has a pre-filter on the front of it with a barb. And the output, I put a 1/8 inch NPT to -6 AN fitting. And then we have aluminum hardline going from here all the way to the front. So it comes out, also goes up over the axle and continues its way on to right past the chassis side motor mount on the passenger side, where there's another -6 AN tube nut that goes to a barb fitting. So we'll run a soft line from there over to the engine, where it'll pick up a stainless steel hard line that goes up around the distributor over the front of the water pump on the front of the engine near the valve cover, takes a 90, and then we'll feed the dual carburetors. Everything turned out really good, I think, in here, and should be serviceable if need be. Obviously, once I get the system aired up, I'm gonna have to do my due diligence and check for leaks. The lines are all up out of the way, and I also have the brake hard line run from the rear axle all the way up to the bulkhead union at the firewall. And so I have a tab welded to the crossbars on the notch bridge for a nice professional connection there, and that will keep the soft line, the braided soft line that mounts to the rear axle, up out of the way. Gives it plenty of room to flex as the suspension travel goes up and down. And so that's about it back here. All of the air plumbing is now completely done. All right, so on the front of the car here, we've been making some good progress as well. Since the engine is out now, I went ahead and welded in the boxed sections for the upper shock mounts for the front here. I made them a while back when I did the box sections for the rear axle, but the motor was in at that time, so I just had them on the shelf. So I cleaned those up, welded those in, pretty happy with how that turned out. I cut off the driver's side chassis motor mount because I need to reconfigure that so the steering shaft has more room to pass by. As you can see, I have the air plumbed all the way from the back up to the front bags. I am using a shorter length of tubing just to come up and over the arm here, and then I have a slip 90-degree fitting to turn the corner here so I don't have to force the line into too tight of a radius. Also, because it makes it a lot more serviceable. If I want to just disconnect the line from right here, I can easily do that. And I also have the brake line from the rear of the car, comes up the firewall here and connects to a 90-degree adapter, and then goes through a bulkhead union through the firewall. And those have stainless steel washers with rubber bonded to them on each side, so they'll seal themselves perfectly against the firewall. Won't have to worry about water or anything like that. It'll dampen any vibrations so that the lines don't squeak or make any noises as this thing is going down the road. Ah, fucker. That's gonna be a good B-roll. Who saw that coming? Pretty much everybody.
You know what? You're fired, okay? You didn't follow Proto. How do you get a job here? You didn't follow Proto, buddy. You're done.